You wake up and check your phone. Within minutes, someone seems richer than you. Someone seems happier than you. Someone seems more successful, more attractive, or somehow further ahead in life. And it feels automatic. You never decided to compare yourself. It just happens. But the real answer is far stranger. The habit of comparison did not begin with social media. It did not begin with modern society. It did not even begin with civilization. It began long before cities existed, long before money, long before written language. To understand why you constantly measure yourself against other people, you have to travel back into a world your ancestors knew far better than you do. A world where comparison was not a bad habit. It was a survival tool. Imagine living 50,000 years ago. You wake up in a small group of hunter-gatherers. There are no job titles, no followers, no resumes, no grades, yet status still exists. Why? Because status affects survival. The strongest hunter may receive more respect. The most skilled tracker may influence decisions. The person trusted by the group may receive help during hard times. Your position among other people matters a lot. If you fall too far behind the group, life becomes dangerous. Your ancestors did not compare themselves because they were insecure. They compared themselves because their brains were trying to answer an important question. Where do I stand? The answer could determine access to food, protection, friendships, and future mates. In other words, comparison was information, useful information, essential information. Your brain still treats it that way today. The problem is that the environment changed faster than the brain. This idea appears throughout evolutionary psychology. The human mind often carries ancient adaptations into modern environments. A system that once helped survival can produce unexpected consequences when conditions change. Comparison may be one of the clearest examples. Consider something fascinating. Your brain rarely compares itself to every person on Earth. Instead, it focuses on people nearby, people you can see, people who seem similar to you, people who belong to your social world. Why? Because ancient comparison was local. Your ancestors were not competing against millions of strangers. They were comparing themselves to perhaps a few dozen people. That was enough. Today, however, a small screen exposes you to thousands of people every day. Millionaires, models, entrepreneurs, celebrities, experts. The comparison machinery remains ancient. The comparison targets become endless. The result is predictable. Your brain becomes overwhelmed. Psychologist Leon Festinger proposed social comparison theory in 1954. His idea was simple. People evaluate themselves partly by comparing themselves with others. When objective measurements are unclear, comparison becomes even more important. Think about happiness, success, popularity, confidence. There is no perfect ruler for these things, so the brain looks around. How am I doing compared to them? The question feels natural because, in many ways, it is. But natural does not always mean helpful. Sometimes comparison motivates growth. Sometimes it destroys peace. The difference often depends on direction. Researchers frequently distinguish between upward and downward comparison. Upward comparison happens when you compare yourself to someone you perceive as better. Downward comparison happens when you compare yourself to someone you perceive as worse off. Both affect the mind in different ways. Upward comparison can inspire improvement. It can also create envy. Downward comparison can create gratitude. It can also create arrogance. The mechanism itself is neither good nor bad. It simply exists. The challenge is learning how to use it rather than being controlled by it. There is another layer that makes the problem even more interesting. Your brain pays special attention to status, not because status is everything, because status once predicted access to important resources. Research by psychologist Susan Fiske and others has shown how quickly humans notice social information related to rank, groups, and relationships. The brain is constantly scanning. Who is respected? Who is ignored? Who is winning? Who is falling behind? Most of this happens automatically. You may think you are simply scrolling through photos. Part of your brain thinks it is gathering survival data. That ancient software never received an update. Now imagine what happens when this system meets modern technology. For most of human history, you only saw brief snapshots of other people's lives. Today, you see carefully selected highlights, victories without failures, smiles without loneliness, success without struggle. The comparison system assumes the information is representative. Often, it is not. You compare your behind-the-scenes reality to someone else's edited presentation. No wonder the result feels painful. The strange thing is that your brain often knows this, yet the emotional reaction remains. Why? Because emotional systems evolved long before critical thinking. Feeling comes first. Analysis arrives later. You see the image. You feel inadequate. Only afterward do you remind yourself that the image may not tell the full story. The emotion already happened. This is one reason comparison can feel irrational. The system was never designed to be perfectly rational. It was designed to be fast. Fast systems often win in nature. Accuracy comes second. Another clue comes from research involving relative status. People often care less about absolute improvement than relative improvement. Think about that. If your life becomes better, you might expect satisfaction to increase automatically. Yet many people still feel unhappy when someone else improves more. Why? Because comparison changes the reference point. Suddenly your achievement feels smaller. Nothing actually changed, yet everything feels different. This reveals an uncomfortable truth. The brain does not experience reality directly. It experiences reality through interpretation, and comparison strongly influences that interpretation. Economists and psychologists have observed similar patterns for decades. Humans frequently judge outcomes relative to surrounding conditions rather than in isolation. Your mind is not asking only what happened. It is asking compared to whom. This creates a trap, a dangerous trap. There will always be someone ahead of you in something. Always. Someone richer, someone smarter, someone stronger, someone more talented. If your self-worth depends entirely on winning comparison games, the finish line keeps moving. You never arrive. That is not a flaw in your character. It is a consequence of the system itself. The system was never built to provide permanent satisfaction. It was built to keep paying attention. Notice the difference. Permanent satisfaction would encourage rest. Constant attention encourages adaptation. Evolution often favors adaptation. This explains something many people find confusing. Major achievements frequently produce only temporary happiness. You reach the goal. You feel amazing. Then the feeling fades. Soon another comparison appears. Another target, another standard, another race. Psychologists sometimes refer to this tendency as part of the hedonic treadmill. You adapt. Then you seek more. Adapt. Seek more. Adapt. Seek more. The cycle continues. Yet comparison is not entirely the enemy. That would be too simple. Without comparison, learning would become difficult. You learn skills by observing others. You improve by noticing examples. You discover possibilities through comparison. The same mechanism that creates insecurity can also create growth. The question is not whether comparison exists. The question is whether you control it. Consider the difference between information and identity. Information says someone is better at a specific skill. Identity says you are therefore worthless. The first conclusion may help. The second conclusion usually harms. Your ancestors mostly needed information. Modern culture often turns comparison into identity. That shift changes everything. A better runner becomes evidence of personal failure. A successful friend becomes proof that you are behind. A talented colleague becomes a threat. The comparison itself is not causing all the pain. The meaning attached to it is. This insight appears in many psychological traditions. Events matter. Interpretations matter more. Your brain generates stories constantly. Sometimes those stories are accurate. Sometimes they are not. When comparison becomes suffering, the hidden story often sounds familiar. I am not enough. I am behind. Everyone else figured it out. I missed my chance. These stories feel true because they are emotional, not because they are accurate. Look carefully at any crowd. Every person is winning somewhere. Every person is struggling somewhere. You simply cannot see most of it. Humans evolved in small groups where information was visible. Modern life hides enormous amounts of reality. You see outcomes, not processes. You see achievements, not sacrifices. You see confidence, not anxiety. This creates distorted comparisons, and distorted comparisons produce distorted conclusions. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar became famous for research suggesting humans maintain a limited number of meaningful social relationships. The exact number matters less than the broader point. Your social brain evolved for relatively small communities, not global audiences, not endless feeds, not 24-hour exposure to strangers. The scale changed dramatically. Your psychology did not. That mismatch affects how you feel every day. Perhaps the most powerful realization is this: comparison is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is evidence that you are human. The urge itself is ancient. The challenge is deciding what to do with it. You can compare yourself endlessly against strangers, or you can compare yourself against your previous self. One approach creates infinite competitors. The other creates a meaningful direction. One asks whether you are winning against everyone. The other asks whether you are growing. Growth and comparison are not identical. Many people spend years confusing them. Growth is personal. Comparison is social. Growth can continue even when someone else performs better. That distinction is liberating. It frees you from a race that never ends. And perhaps that is the deepest irony. The comparison system evolved to help your ancestors survive within a tribe. Today, it often convinces people they are failing despite living safer, healthier, and more prosperous lives than most humans who ever existed. The ancient tool remains. The environment transformed. The rules changed. Your brain is still trying to solve yesterday's problems in today's world. So the next time you catch yourself comparing your life to someone else's, pause for a moment. Remember where that feeling comes from. Remember how old it is. Remember that your brain is performing a task it learned thousands of generations ago. It is asking where you stand. But you do not have to answer the question the same way your ancestors did. You can choose a different measure. You can choose progress over ranking, growth over status, direction over comparison. And when you look at someone who seems further ahead, you may finally see what was there all along. Not a verdict, not a threat, not proof that you are behind, just another human being. Because the moment you stop treating comparison as a judgment and start seeing it as an ancient survival instinct, the thing that once controlled you begins to lose its power. You wake up and check your phone. But now you understand what your brain is really doing.